I wish I could do it in a nutshell. What's the glycemic index in a nutshell? So you got carbs, you got proteins, you got fats. And carbs that are single molecule, just glucose, not with the attached fructose, so like sugar on a glycemic index would be 50. Glucose, which means dextrose, would be all the way up to 98 to 100. And as the glycemic index climbs, the blood sugar goes up, and then your body recruits insulin. Insulin tells blood sugar where to go: liver, muscles, brain, and then, and not in that sequence, but all together. And then the proteins will also elevate, especially if they're very lean proteins, they'll elevate glycemic index as well and make you full, but even for a longer period of time. And then fat is not going to have a glycemic index. Now, saturated fat will not have a glycemic index, and monounsaturated fat most likely won't have a glycemic index. But some seed oils will have a glycemic index or even have a negative effect. And I know you're going, what do you mean by that? It's just the research is pretty bullshit. It obviously has a little bit of a glycemic index because it's a dead, denatured fat. But we'll get into that on polyunsaturated fats. I'll do a video on all three: saturated, monounsaturated, and polyunsaturated, and their effects and the different types. But a glycemic index is going to immediately come up on a carbohydrate and immediately come down, especially if it's just glucose itself. So the problem is that you're hungry again. Then you got to eat, and it's kind of a roller coaster, and it's only about an hour or two that it lasts. Protein, on the other hand, will last about 3 or 4 hours. So that's why it's kind of cool to have chicken and rice, not just chicken, or meat and potatoes, not just meat. So, but when you have both of them together, not only do they raise the glycemic index, but they extend it for a couple hours. So that's where we get into that habit of eating every 3 to 4 hours throughout the day to maintain as much protein as we possibly can, and fat that we need in our body, and carbohydrate, meaning in glucose form, for brain and movement. So the glycemic index does a couple of things though, but as it's raised, it's coupled insulin that recruits to tell the blood sugar where to go, is coupled with a hormone called amylin, and we call it amylin, the little stepsister, and she comes up and she's your satiety hormone, and she's the one that makes you feel full. And so anytime your glycemic index goes up, you're going to be full. Anytime it stays suppressed, then you're going to end up maintaining hunger that entire time. I'll give you an example. I used to eat cashews, and I would just eat a big old can, and I would eat it and just never get full because it was so high in fat, and that's what nuts are. People always think, oh, nuts are protein. Nah, brother, they're 60, 70% fat before they're protein, and that type of protein you don't digest very well, or it's not a very useful protein. So that's the glycemic index suppressed. However, I want you to know that foods that are low glycemic will most likely make you eat through your caloric overset. And a lot of times when we eat too high fat of a diet coupled with carbohydrates with not enough protein, that puts us into those situations. That's why I talk about tier 1 and tier 2 and the tier 3 foods that some of you are eating. But anyways, getting back to the glycemic index, what's cool about the glycemic index is you can use it as something to keep you in a caloric deficit. So just wanted to let you know, if you want to hit me back with something a little more specific, I would love to get even more specific than that. But I told you I'd do it in a couple minutes, and sorry I couldn't do it in less than 4. Bye. Have a great night.